the focus of today's presentation is on our budget development software that we have just started to roll out. Really exciting. Used our budget development tools earlier this year in East Moline, Illinois, a handful of others. And if you tuned in about 2 weeks ago, Jackie English from our team made a presentation on the complete software upgrade that we had been working on for over a year, that we've just started to roll out to our current clients who implement priority-based budgeting, and where her presentation covered how we create a program inventory, program costs, program scores, as well as the insights development. Where her presentation ended was budget development, how to use your priority-based budgeting data in the budget development process overall. And that's what I'm going to be covering here today. So I know that there are many current priority-based budgeting implementers, which is awesome. And you will know what I mean when I say things like program inventory, program costs, and program scores and quartiles. And there are also several of you who are brand new to all of this. So I'll try to tell you a little bit more what I'm talking about, this vocabulary around quartiles and prioritization, as it is connecting this additional program information to the budget process that makes this whole advancement, this leap in budgeting, all the more exciting. Thanks, Liz, for dropping in that into the chat. But I thought I'd start with a quick, easy to follow demonstration, hopefully. And it concerns looking at data, line item data, from one year to the next. And I want you to put yourself in the shoes of the decision maker trying to analyze what is the difference between the line items that you're looking at. And hopefully, by virtue of the demonstration, the power of the program, this wrapper, will come out for how to understand resource allocation changes and recommendations a lot better. So what you're looking at on the screen, hopefully, are two years of non-personnel data. Over on the left-hand side, you see that they total $32,000, and we're looking at a host of non-personnel line items, from office supplies to books and magazines, and what do we have there? Professional services, and so on. And the next year, the total cost for the non-personnel line items is $27,809. And if you really scrutinize to look for the delta, you could find that office supplies went down, software maintenance has gone up, professional and consulting services has changed as well. It has gone up considerably. And this is the position that many of our decision makers are in when they see a departmental budget come in, or the budget office is taking a look, and you see a department's last year's budget or their base budget, and you see their current year budget, and it's awfully hard to tell if this is a good thing or a bad thing, that these line items have changed in a certain way. And so it leads us to asking a whole host of questions to try to decipher, why are certain line items changing, and does this have anything to do with priorities that we're trying to achieve, and so on and so forth, the normal budget deliberation process that takes place. Well, maybe we go one step further with this particular example, and we layer in some personnel data. And again, you can see on the left-hand side, personnel in this particular unit amounts to about 92,000, and on the right-hand side, it's about 82,000. And again, not the easiest interpretation to find out what's taking place and why. However, if I were to drop in this really pivotal piece of information and tell you that what you're actually looking at in the line item data is a program, and the program is a payroll processing program that is serviced by a couple of FTEs and uses various non-personnel line items to provide payroll, the whole thing makes a lot more sense. We can see the trend over the years, and that's exactly what we're looking at right now. This is the total cost of payroll as it has shifted between 2018 to 2019 and 2020. And it's like a forest from the trees type of moment when you start to realize that, yes, line items are absolutely critical for spending control. and for accounting. But when we really want to understand the bigger picture and come to a realization of why those line items are changing, it's much easier to talk when we're talking about what's happening with payroll processing. Is demand going up? The costs seem to be going down. What's taking place? Well, this comes from the city of Littleton, Colorado, and they have been using their priority-based budgeting data in the budget process now for a couple of years. And they have produced what you see is over on the left-hand side are program summary reports that certainly describe the line item changes that are taking place within the budget from one year to the next at the personnel level and at the non-personnel level. They go even further to describe what is the nature of the change. In this case, if you were curious, if you were really scrutinizing those numbers, you might have seen that the cost was actually going down for payroll processing. And the reason was because they were not filling a vacant position, which you could have seen in that personnel data. And it's a program efficiency. They're claiming that they can provide the exact same service from one year to the next for less cost overall by not filling a certain position and still providing the higher level of service. In the priority-based budgeting data, we can bring to bear what we know about the payroll processing program, the fact that it's a quartile 1, which again, for anybody who is not familiar with what that means, quartile 1 is it's like shorthand in priority-based budgeting for highly aligned to the results and the priorities that the organization is trying to achieve. We come to know that this program is highly mandated because these are scores that the programs are connected to by way of the priority-based budgeting process, the degree of reliance that the organization has on payroll processing, cost recovery, change in demand, and the population, in this case, an internal population, the population who is served. We also get to see how this program scored against the results that it was evaluated against, and that's what makes it a quartile 1 program. As you see this, hopefully you can see that it's a shift, not focusing in on line item budget request, but communicating those line item budget requests within the overall context of a program, in this case, payroll processing. This is what program budgeting can look like. And Shane Kavanaugh and I wrote a paper about this in 2015. It was published in GFOA and it's titled "The Challenges and the Promise of Program Budgeting." And within the paper, Shane goes on to elaborate on all of the virtues of what can happen when you do a program-based budgeting, that a program budget shows exactly what your organization does, how much it costs, and the trade-offs that are taking place. As payroll processing goes down in spending from a program efficiency, what other programs are actually being invested in to a higher degree? The funny thing is that, maybe, is that this paper was written in 2015. That was, recent, depending on how you consider time, but that's kind of a long time ago. In fact, just this year in 2021, for any of you who participate in the Distinguished Budget Award program through GFOA, they have started to incorporate program level reporting, the exact same concepts that we were describing in this paper back in 2015 as part of what they're hoping to evaluate communities on as they're trying to apply for that distinguished award. So the question is, what is the challenge? Why from 2015 is it not like everybody's doing program budgeting? I would even share one more story. I made a presentation earlier this year, which was to an audience, and the theme of the conference was celebrating the 100-year anniversary of the line item budget. And as I made my presentation talking about the power of the program and what can be different when we focus on programs as a vehicle for change, one of the audience members chimed in and said, I can't help but ask, but program budgeting and this whole concept is not necessarily new. It's been around for 50 years. Are you trying to tell me that organizations are not doing program budgeting by and large, 100% of the time? And my answer was, no, it's hard. And as Shane pointed out in the paper in 2015, the number one challenge was that our systems our financial systems, our ERPs, our budgeting systems and tools don't make it easy. That was the point that Shane brought up in the paper. And that is the primary reason that organizations have had a tough time moving towards a programmatic lens towards budgeting. And even for those of you in the priority-based budgeting community, I think you've realized over the years that you build your program data in priority-based budgeting. You have payroll processing to police patrol and every other program that you offer. You have their costs, you have their scores, but your PBB data has at best been helpful business intelligence meant to inform the budget process, but it has never been completely connected to the budget process because we didn't create a budgeting platform. And that's exactly what we have endeavored to do. And that's why today's presentation is exciting, is because we have actually built budget development workflows into your online priority-based budgeting software. And that's what I want to be able to demo here in just a moment. A couple other pieces of inspiration that we've taken. If you check out one of the PBB community organizations, the City of Fort Saskatchewan, Alberta, has incorporated their program data in their budget book, and it is front and center, where you can see the programs in their inventory, their prior year cost, their proposed budget. They're in fact right at that moment right now developing their recommended budget. And for any program that has a change to it, they are describing the rationale, the reason for that programmatic change. Is it a service level increase as differentiated from just a basic cost of inflation for a particular program? And they're connecting those programs, of course, to the quartile system, the priority and relevance ranking that takes place in PBB to evaluate in the budget deliberation process, should they say yes? Might they deny the request? Fort Sask has been doing a really good job, but even Fort Sask had to do a lot of this work manually, again, because there was no tool to help facilitate the program-centric budget requests that were coming from the departments. Conceptually, what we're trying to do is, it's not a departure from the use of line items. All of you well know that we take the line items and we cost allocate them to programs. However, it's specific to how we use this data in the budget process. The challenge, as you see in this illustration, and this is one of our organizations who went through budgeting with us earlier this year, is departments typically start their thinking process and the process of developing their request by analyzing their line item data. They might see trends over the years, and then their job ultimately is to come forward with a budget request. They might say, hey, computer maintenance is going down, just like we saw in the Littleton example, but I'm asking for 25 grand additional in professional services, and maybe I need another $5,000 in workforce training, and my overall delta for the budget is increasing by about 29,000. And they go into the tools and they enter in their budget requests at the line item level. And while it's easy on departments, probably because we've been doing it this way for 100 years, it's easy because we know how to enter our line item budgets. The trouble is, the shortfall is that it's unclear what is being impacted by virtue of all of these little deltas taking place at the line item level. And that's where we need the program data. If you take this $25,000 request, for example, this is what normally happens in the budget deliberation hearings for professional services. A council member or city manager or budget staff will say, what is this increase all about? Does this have anything to do with the city or county's priorities overall? And the department will try to answer that question. We walk around it and test the sensitivity, and we say, what if we doubled this expense, this $25,000? Would that have a profound impact on our results? Or what if we didn't approve it altogether? Does this have anything to do with the outcomes we're trying to achieve? And other questions like, is it mandated? Are we needing to purchase these services to meet a requirement? Is there any sort of partner involved? Are there fees? Is there a grant coming along with it? And these are the types of questions that are usually asked. What we are trying to do is take that $25,000 request and say, what program or programs does this $25,000 request impact, and then connect it to everything else that we know about that program that has come from the priority-based budgeting process, the scores of that program, the degree of mandate, the alignment or lack thereof with the results that your organization is trying to achieve. And in this particular case, you can see here is the $25,000 request associated with programs within the department. As I had alluded to, there are actually multiple programs that are being impacted. $15,000 to a quartile 1 program around environment, sustainability, and resiliency, and $10,000 of professional services increase for a quartile 3 program that has less to do with achieving the results. And we want to position you to have these data sets connected, this context, this understanding of the program from a PBB perspective, because it might lead you to approve some requests and it might lead you to deny other requests, which is better decision making. You want to have the requests for higher priority, more aligned programs up for consideration, perhaps more so than requests for spending increases that increase the spending for lower priority programs that maybe you don't want to grow. As East Moline, Illinois is right in the thick of their budget recommendation requests coming in, what they are able to see in the portal is the bottom bar is all of the budget requests that have been coming in. This is for one particular department. And as they're starting to go through the approval process, notice the colors are corresponding to what you see there are Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. Those are the programs in their quartile alignment. So right there in the middle of the budget hearings, they're able to see for any given department what's being requested. Are you requesting increases for a high priority program? What is this 26,000 for an increase to a lower priority quartile 3 program? Does that quartile 3 budget request come with its own revenue? Is it offset by a grant perhaps? These are the types of questions they're addressing in the middle of their budget hearings. And this is what we're trying to set them up to do really well. So hopefully, I wanted to spend just a little bit of time just setting the stage for conceptually what we're trying to set you up to do. And now I want to show you a demonstration. And I think I'm going to go view, enter full screen mode. Pretty cool. So picking up where Jackie left off in our last discussion, this is what the portal looks like. And oops, Denver International, I'm poaching their Wi-Fi. And they're telling me I don't have enough juice over here. Hopefully you're seeing my screen. In the new and improved portal, this is where the budget requests reside as well. And so all of your program inventory data, everything we know about the program, how you've mapped your line items to that program, how the program scores relative to your results, any insights is all within your portal. And if anybody missed Jackie's presentation and want to go back to it to see how data creation is taking place, you can certainly do that. But I want to walk you through the budget. So first things first, we have this summary of requests, and that is helpful because we're able to see all the types of requests that are coming forward from a particular department at the program level. I'll skip to create budget requests because I really want to harp on one point. There are two approaches, and as the departments are making any sort of budget request, they can either make it from the program lens, which is what we want them to do. We want them to say, hey, I'm thinking of payroll processing. That's my program. I need some new staff. It's quartile 1, and that's how I'm going to shape the budget request that is coming through. There are, of course, reasons why a line item based budget request could make sense. For example, let's say the department is thinking about some basic inflation in a fuel line item overall, and they don't want to go through every single program where they've allocated that fuel line item and increase it by 3%. Instead, they want to start at the line item level and just make that request for a 3% increase, and then have that line item flow back through all the programs that it has been previously allocated to. That we have both of those approaches, starting points to set the department up for success. But here, let's look at a program request. So here, the department would be looking at their entire program inventory, their cost, their description. And in this case, I'm going to look at animal control call response. So I'm in animal control department, and this is one of my programs overall. Note that there are multiple requests that have already been developed for this particular program. So that's a really cool key concept. For any given program, maybe you have a personnel request that has something to do with increasing service levels. But you might have a different type of request, for example, the fuel increase, that has nothing to do with a service level increase. It's a different type of request about inflation of costs. And we wanted to be able to set the decision makers up to see those as things that they might approve or deny. They're different things, different decision packages overall. I'm going to go to create a new request. And when I do so, I open up a multiple step process to develop my budget request. So here's my program description, how I've costed it in the past, any sort of program revenue overall, and I drop in a quick description of the type of request that I'm looking at. In this case, I'm asking for a new dispatcher. Down below, we have learned from Pittsburgh, and we've learned from East Moline that for any given budget request, there might be certain attributes about that request that are also interesting to keep track of. And we want to flag them because we want to filter on them later on in the process. I've mentioned that we definitely want to distinguish between the intent of the request. So here are, these are customizable, but these are different styles or flavors of budget requests that could be coming through. Like I said, service level increase or program efficiency, that's what I might choose for this one. In all of our work with the Bloomberg cities this year, budget requests, we wanted to flag by way of their impact on a specific equity objective. So here the question is, does this request, no matter what program it is belonging to, have anything to do with our new priority for equity and our budgeting for equity initiative? So in this case, I might say, hey, it has some impact. It's the same principle of program scoring. And in Pittsburgh's case, they also wanted to flag programs that had an impact on their climate action goals overall. So I'll just select high degree of impact in this particular case. All right, so what I'm doing is identifying some minimum specifications for the budget request, in this case for personnel. And the final prompt we are asking for is the nature of the request you're about to make impacting personnel? If so, let us know. Is it impacting non-personnel? And the reason we're including these checkboxes here is because there are different follow-up questions that we could ask depending on if it was personnel only or non-personnel. I'll get to those in just a second, but there are a series of more specific open text field questions that you can ask depending on if it's a personnel related or non-personnel request. So go ahead and hit next. So first thing that comes up is, how is the program currently staffed? You are asking for personnel and this new dispatcher. Here are the current staff members who you have allocated to this program. So this should look very familiar to you all who have gone through priority-based budgeting. This is your personnel allocation, and we're bringing it forward to the department because we want them to look at everybody who they have already staffing the program. We also want to bring it up because as they are requesting a new staff member, they could model their new request off of any of their current or existing staff. So is this new dispatcher like a current dispatcher who we already have and who might be paid at a similar pay grade overall? So I'm going to go ahead and hit add for my request. This is a dispatcher. If I have information on the position number, I can go ahead and add it. I'll show you a little bit later where if the department has no clue about a line item that they're impacting or a position number, if you're using position control, then the budget office will get prompted to add that additional information later on in the process as the requests are coming in and being evaluated for approval or denial. I go ahead and enter my request overall, and I can enter in my percent allocation to this particular program. Great. I hit add, continue, and if I scroll down below, I not only see my current personnel who are allocated to the program, but I also see my request coming through. So my delta, my new program cost, is increasing by virtue of this new dispatcher overall. Okay, great. Another thing that has come up that has been interesting is the opportunity to model things like vacancy savings. That's what I was just going to demonstrate here. So in this particular example, I am trying to notify the budget department that I used to have an animal controller. I don't have that position filled right now. So they used to be allocated to the point of about 20%, and it was $11,200 as part of my program cost. But now I'm telling the system that I'm not filling that position, and so I want to take advantage of that $11,200 savings overall. So I would go ahead and click add for that type of personnel related request, and I can scroll down and I see not only have I asked for the new dispatcher, but I'm also indicating a degree of vacancy savings, and I have $11,000 on the table. Great. So my personnel requests are coming together. Remember, I clicked on both personnel and non-personnel for this budget request. So in this case, I am going to start my non-personnel component. So you might be thinking, why would we have a non-personnel? We just asked for a new dispatcher. In this case, the idea is that we might have some uniforms, or we might have some training, we might have some office supplies or equipment that we are trying to associate with the person who we are adding, which is really cool. You want to have a package deal that it's not like we're asking for these office supply increases on the side. It's coming with this new dispatcher who we're trying to ask for. I know the object number. I'm requesting $2,300 for a very fancy uniform overall. I hit add, and it is just leading me through the workflow. Here's my dispatcher uniform. Here's the $2,300, and things are moving along swimmingly. Okay, so I've just walked you through creating a specific request from a program lens, from a program perspective, and this final summary table is a preview of the request, and it is telling me for this animal control program in my new dispatcher, how is a decision maker about to look at this? I can see my personnel costs have gone up. I can see my non-personnel costs have gone up. I can see that the program is quartile 1. I can see how that program scored because I'm bringing all of that information together from all of the other priority-based budgeting work. I can see the alignment or lack thereof of this program and our basic program attributes and results. And I see my summary of how I clicked, the type of program change that we're looking at, the impact on equity, the impact on alignment. I just want to be able to show you this because it's important that the department is now realizing this is how somebody else is going to view my request. I can already start to imagine the type of questions that they might be able to ask, but it's also meant to save time. This is what we heard from the team in Pittsburgh as the departments were making their budget presentations in their deliberation process. These are the types of questions that always get asked. Is the program mandated? Tell me how this request that you're about to make has anything to do with our climate objectives. Does this relate to the mayor's priorities? And so on and so forth. So when we can connect the budget request to the program and tie in all the PBB data, we're answering a lot of these questions ahead of time. All of this information comes down in a report. I think I've got a slide to demonstrate that in just a little bit. And that report becomes a compendium, something that is the background information, the dossier on all the budget requests from that department as the budget hearings are taking place. Great, so I hit save and I have now submitted this type of budget request. The next step, I had mentioned that we have customizable questions that can be presented to the department depending on if it was a personnel request or a non-personnel request, typical to what you might already be doing in your basic decision packages or business case requests that you have departments go through. Again, we're including this here because to the extent that the department fills out the questions, that information moves over to the downloadable report. So I'm scrolling through, these are, I won't go through and answer all these questions here right now. And I can answer some of them or skip it and fill it out later. That's what I'm going to do. But I think hopefully the point comes across clearly. This is where you can have the department answer or address some follow-up questions that come up. Fantastic. So we also have, I mentioned the ability for the department to create a request from a line item level. So if they want to toggle over to line items, they're going to see their line item budget. We went back and forth on this and said, but we want to drive them completely to program-centric budget development requests. And from what we're seeing, the vast majority of the requests are program-centric. But by allowing some of the requests to take place at a line item level, I mentioned basic inflation and fuel, maybe they have a contract that's going up or their advertising costs are going up, they can still make that request at a line item level if they must. And then it will flow through back to the programs to which that line item has previously been allocated. Okay, so as the requests are coming forward, we can see all of them just kind of in a summary page. This is everything that the department is asking for. I can open that request back up again. And if I wanted to, I can go back in and answer anything that I've left unanswered before. It's just kind of a place to house all of the budget requests that are coming in. But now this becomes interesting, especially to you all who are super users. But I showed this for East Moline as they were looking at all of the budget requests for any given department. We can see those requests through a lens of priority, of quartiles. Are the requests quartile 1? Are they quartile 2 in nature, quartile 3, and quartile 4? And from the reviewer's perspective, as the budget office is looking through all the requests coming in and trying to decide, can we afford these? What do we have for our current budget? What are the requests and what are we moving forward to approve? This is where we can get into that discussion. We can filter this, of course, by accounting fund, by department. Here I will get into a subset of the general fund. So we're seeing all of the requests that impact general fund line items under the wrapper of the programs. That's pretty cool to us. hopefully that's interesting as you're thinking about it. I've just subset on all the requests impacting general fund line items. However, I'm seeing the programs that they're impacting, whether or not those programs are, remember, programs don't have to be housed in one fund or another. Programs can have accounts tied to it that cross departmental funds. That goes back to Shane Kavanaugh's point. This was not easy, but this is something that is the power of program-centric budgeting. I can move and see my approved or denied requests overall. And I want to select, let's go ahead and approve our animal control. Okay, oh yeah, I had mentioned earlier on that for any given request that you are coming up with, the department may not have any idea what to do for a position number. If you're using position control, that might be something that takes place in the budget office. It might take place in HR. So if you are approving a request overall, you can go back in and tend to any of the missing detail, because at the end of all this, after programmatic requests have been approved, we still need to get the line item data for what has just been approved back out of the system detangle it from the program so we can see what did we just approve for this animal controller or for this maintenance or miscellaneous line item. We need to make sure we're tying everything back to account 11101, so on and so forth, to make sure that we have the right information that we're approving for our approved budget. So hopefully that is making sense as well. Great. This was probably one of the main punchlines overall, was just that as you all in the budget office or city manager's office or so on are approving requests or denying requests, we can start to see an overall scoreboard come to life, just like I was showing from East Moline a little bit earlier. For any of you who have been with us long enough to know, we have a Fiscal Health tool that demonstrates long-term revenues and expenses. On our product roadmap for 2022 is also integrating a Fiscal Health scoreboard to be able to see, now that we've just approved this animal control dispatcher, our ongoing costs, our red line, have gone up. It's anticipated that those costs are ongoing, therefore they'll be in 2022, 2023. And do we have the ongoing revenues to afford this budget request that we've just approved? This is the little aside. Okay, last thing that I wanted to demonstrate is some of the customizable options that I talked about earlier. Remember, in Pittsburgh's case, it was really important for them to flag budget requests at the program level that had an impact on their climate action goals. So here's where we can go in and modify those types of flags that you are trying to incorporate with any given budget request. There's impact on climate, impact on equity, type of programmatic change. Identifying the intent of the program change has been really cool to separate true service level increases from inflation in costs or contracts. So those are up to you to keep or modify at your discretion. And I'd also mentioned that we have in the narrative section general questions about the budget request that is coming forward, in addition to specific personnel related questions. Why did we do this? Because when it came to asking for new FTE, our organizations wanted to see, hey, have you had a chance to check in with HR? Is this salary approved for the position that you're thinking about hiring for? Or do you need to go and get that permission overall? So there are specific personnel related questions that we only wanted to show up if they're asking for personnel, and the same idea on the non-personnel. We wanted certain questions over there, and not to have just a giant list of questions, and some of them are non-applicable and some of them are more applicable. So this is the budget development component that we really wanted to spend the majority of our time talking through today. I want to go back to my slides. So as you can see, this is what East Moline is going through right now. And they're in the midst of approving certain requests and denying others. In Pittsburgh's case, they have just approved, well, they've just created the mayor's recommended budget as of a couple weeks ago. But what I wanted to show you, at least in slides, is that in the midst of that budget deliberation process that was taking place, so the departments have gone in, they've created their program-centric budget requests, and now it comes time to have a presentation, or however it goes in your organization. Most of our some step where the departments half of their request. We wanted to have a summary of everything that you saw me walk through in the portal. They could download. So it's organized. You could only download a particular page in a report if it was, hey, I'm just meeting with Bureau of Animal Care and Control, or I'm just meeting with EMS today. You can just download their component of the report. But this is the full report, everything together. As you can see, for any specific request within that department at the program level, we're getting that summary of the personnel impacts, the non-personnel, the program that it's attached to, the PBB data, the summary of how they answered their specific questions um, from that narrative section overall, and then a running tally. So this is the same information that's in the tools. I just wanted to be able to demonstrate that this comes out in a handy report to support those discussions. And end of the day, when you are downloading your final data, it's the same line item data that you've entered into online priority-based budgeting, where we are taking your non-personnel line items in your personnel and allocating those to your programs. Then they go through the request process. And I mentioned that for everything that has now been approved, we need to dump it back out of the system. Currently, we are exporting back into a database or an Excel file, so that you will have the opportunity to take this data and put it back into your financial system. But it's every account along the way, the line item level, the current budget that was loaded, whether something was requested, approved, or denied. And then the punchline is, here is the 2022 budget for that particular line item overall. I know I have some questions. I should probably go look at those. I will see. I'll take a quick pause. I did want to leave some time. We have about 15 minutes left, and I'll open up the chat. Awesome. Katie is here. Katie, you missed the part. I'm on my way to a SpaceX launch, and I'm at DIA, but I thought you would find that interesting.
Yes, for sure.
Awesome. I don't see, please go ahead and enter questions that you might have in chat along the way. Or you can feel free to come off of mute as well. And Liz is putting in some of our reference material. That's really cool.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Missy.
How are you? Good to see you. Great job.
Thank you.
I've been very excited to see the develop, and you spoke exactly to what a lot of us have talked about for the years in terms of how to create a line item budget and make it useful and tell a story. So this is great. And I thought I'd just ask my question here versus chat, but and you may have mentioned this, but I'm trying to think of some of the places that are using and going to this model. Who is included in their reviews? Who from, I guess, internally is reviewing all of the requests and helping to determine which request to move forward? What's been your experience with some of your clients so far?
Patrick, I don't know if you're available, and I hate to put you on the spot, but Patrick Cornell is here from City of Pittsburgh. If you had any sort of experience to share for who you involved in that review process, please feel free to come off mute. And
Chris, I believe that Patrick had to jump off.
No, I'm here.
Oh, great.
Surprise. Hi, so thanks for having us. Really excited for this and to continue working with Resource X. This year, we had departments enter all of the requests into the tool, and then from there, our budget analysts, work to compile them, using the documents and the exports. And then we worked with our mayor's office, in particular this year, the chief of staff, to kind of go through those requests. So, I think it's really up to the process that you usually have set up. We are able to use them to go back and forth with departments, but in the end, it was our budget office and the mayor's office as we get ready to present this budget to council.
thanks, Patrick. Missy, one thing that Patrick said that rang true for us, it has been interesting that not every organization we've worked with has the exact same budget deliberation process overall. Sometimes it's a lot more controlled, or the recommendations are coming strictly out of finance or budget. In other cases, it is far more open, and there are presentations from departments to chief of staff, budget office, mayor's office, city manager's office. For whatever process is taking place, we just wanted to make sure that the departments have created their request at the program level, and that whoever is interpreting that can see both the line item and the program data packaged with the PBB information as well. Missy, is that helpful getting to what you were trying to think through?
It is very helpful. And if Patrick doesn't mind, I have another question for him, and that is, or any other user on the call. What are your departments preparing their budgets now to submit to you? Do you have an enterprise system that you're using, or are you just using Excel forms?
Do you mean to do these actual requests?
Before the budgeteer, what were departments using to submit their budget request?
Right. So we were using, depended on the year, sometimes we would make a Microsoft Office, just a Word document, and then they would fill it out and submit. The past few years, we've been using, Microsoft Forms just so it was easy to submit and then have the compilated Excel file generated automatically.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Missy. And there are a couple of great questions. So I had one that was around, Monica, I'll get to yours in a second. I had a direct chat that was having notes attached to the budget request. And not only in the tools, I think everybody saw how that's taking place. Let's see here. Let's see if I can get back to a couple of screens. As you are creating your request overall, you absolutely have the opportunity to be adding specific information around that particular request, but then to export it back out. Yes, not only can you get it into this PDF with all of the notes on what the request was all about, but this is all exportable back into Excel as well. So Jim, I think that might have been your question. Every word that's written in the text fields to support the request that's coming through can also be dumped out not only in PDF, but in the Excel form. I just focused in on the punchline. You got to be able to get to the recommended budget or the approved budget, but you can also get it out in Excel. Monica, you had a question about the attributes. And so in the example that I walked through, so again, thinking from the perspective of the department who is making the request, this was that summary screen where they've asked for a new dispatcher, they've had some vacancy savings, they asked for new uniforms, and I see the full package coming together. This is where that package is now connected to the rest of your priority-based budgeting data. So we can see those basic program attributes for this animal control program, degree of mandate, degree of reliance, and so on, as well as how the program scored relative to results and its quartile. So this is certainly one place where that data is coming through.
Well, how do you aggregate that? I mean, these are no number. I mean, I'm sorry, we probably need to look at the YouTube, I suppose, but if you were to then put these in a scatter plot or something like that that says, okay, this one is good, this one is not, why is this scoring so low on the attribute when it really should be higher or whatever? I mean, I don't see the.
Are you saying like?
So your score, if you compare it to another program relative to how they scored, how does that work here? Because I would expect like you give these two certain attribute to score, but you're kind of more giving it the, I don't know if this is a text that you automatically put on a drop down or what's the kind of like attribute? How do you see that? How do you incorporate the attribute scoring trade-off discussion into these reports that you're showing?
I'll try, and then tell me if I'm hot or cold in answering your question. So this screenshot was demonstrating in aggregate for a department all of their requests seen through the lens of how those requests impact programs at the quartile level, so that when we're considering trade-offs, should we approve one thing or deny something else, the question might be, tell me more about your request if it is a quartile 3. You'd still want to ask the same questions around quartile 1, but this is every particular request will have a quartile designation, attribute designations as well. Is it attached to a mandated program? That's where I was going with the animal control example overall. Is that what you're thinking about?
I mean, the thing is like if you have 10 programs, you only have a certain amount of funds, and you give each of them their attributes, you give them whatever. And then you're trying to look at all the 10 programs and say, well, I can't, I have to make some trade-offs here. Like this program is performing well because the attribute score is really high, and it has low cost. So this is something that I like to keep. But if my attributes are scoring low and it also costs a lot, then I wouldn't want it. So anyway, that's kind of how we've been looking at this attributes and scoring.
If I'm not mistaken, so what I'm showing here is the summary of the budget requests. So if you only had 10 programs, and these are all of the requests, here's a program, I need a new staff member, here's a line item request, and so on and so forth. Here's where we're seeing all of those requests through the lens of quartiles. I think you're asking a broader question, which is not just about the budget process itself, but looking at all programs that you have, their costs, how they attributes, and so on. Is that true?
Yes, I think that's correct.
Okay, so it's probably easier to bounce back into Jackie's presentation from a couple weeks ago, but that's like the foundational data that you build, your program inventory, your costs, your scores, is giving you that baseline.
Yeah.
So here's your current budget, if you will.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then now all of this is a request on top of it, like a delta.
Okay, that works.
How this just with yesterday. Staff wants to say, well, I understand the current budget, and I still want to rely on with the program. Tulsa is doing the same. They call that thing. A certain amount of last year.
Well, I think we lost Chris here. Does anyone have any?
He's back.
Oh, he's back.
I'm back. I don't know what happened. I had a blip, but then I came back. Sorry, everyone.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Jackie here. And everyone else. Just to the question specifically about basic program attributes too. So as Chris was kind of demonstrating, we do have that other graphic that's showing you based off of each request how it scores according to the basic program attributes themselves in addition to the quartiles. And then we have the ability to filter on the attributes as well as they are attached to the programs that have requests. I can quickly kind of demonstrate what that looks like, but just wanted to make sure Monica and anyone else who might have had the same question that made sense as far as how we incorporate those basic program attributes to the requests.
Awesome. Thanks, Jackie.
Yeah. Monica or others, do you guys still have questions about the BPAs or anything else?
I'll have another question about the training of for end users in your organization, how long did it take to sort of train your departments to use the tool to prepare their budgets?
I might also, if Patrick is still here, let him speak to someone who's actually done it. And Chris can speak to that as well, I think. But generally, it's been pretty fast. Chris, did you want to say something?
The only 2 cents that I would add is the training on the technology has been pretty easy. There are other components like where are we taking into account the personnel budget for next year and who's doing that part. The fact that hopefully Missy, your salary is going to be higher next year than this year, and that won't necessarily show up as a budget request. That is like a budget process planning quick meeting just to say, have we run through the checklist of everything that needs to take place in your timeline? The departmental training, and I also would leave it up to Patrick if he's willing to add his 2 cents. We were impressed because Patrick and Kevin in Pittsburgh did the training. So that was impressive to us. Yeah, we fielded a few questions as some departments were up against the deadline in the last minute to get their budget requests in, and they said, hey, we haven't paid attention to this thing yet. Where do we go in to enter the requests overall? That only happened once or twice. But the concepts of, is your request personnel program centric? Is it line item centric? Are you asking for personnel? Are you asking for non-personnel? So far, so good. Fingers crossed. It's been going really swiftly and quick, Missy.
Yeah, I'm still here. I would say that actually figuring out the budget tool itself was not a big time commitment. You know, it's the departments were all very familiar with the ResourceX tools themselves because of our prior work this year. You know, some departments really loved it. Some departments we're still trying to get them there. So it really depends on, you know, just how different individuals work and how they are willing to move into new technologies. As long as there's some flexibility, I think, you know, with Chris and his team, there's always easy ways to figure out the problems.
Thanks for sharing that, Patrick. For East Moline, we did like an hour training overall with their staff. So that was East Moline, Illinois. Missy, I think you might chuckle at this. I don't know, but the budget development process seems to be way faster and more intuitive than the data creation that they had gone through prior to program inventory costing. And so, you know, knowing what we know about Columbia, for all the work that has gone in from departments on developing program inventory, doing cost allocation, thinking that through, using that data as a platform to make budget requests that we just went through, it seems to be a lot way smoother.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Sure. Well, man, I appreciate everybody who has stuck around for the full hour. I may apologetically have to sign off myself to go catch a flight and watch this rocket launch, but I'll end here. We started with the GFOA article and the promise of program budgeting, and our hope, like what we're inspired by, is that this is a mindset shift that has proven not to be so hard for the departments to get their head around. And if that was like our big bet on the table, if we can get departments to think programmatically, then the whole thing makes a lot more sense to decision makers. And so far, that's the feedback that we're getting. So we would love to hear from you if you're thinking about going down this path to do program-centric budgeting. You can phase it. You can just consider specific decision packages of a certain dollar amount to dip your toe in the water, but we think it's like a full-fledged budget process overall. It's how it's been working. If you do have follow-up questions, please contact me, or Liz had left some of our information in the chat. I know, like for St. Albert and some of you on the call, we have follow-up discussions coming up here within the next few weeks to talk about your implementation approach ahead. I think Rowlett as well. Robert was on the line. Flagstaff is in the exact same boat. Like, all we ask is we're going to try to match up with your budget development process and timeline, and then talk through how to build upon the PBB data that you have and bring it to life. If you don't have PBB data, let it, talk to us as well, because that is at least getting to a program inventory and mapping your current line items to the programs is a phase one to set you up to be able to do the program-centric budgeting that we just talked about. But it's thrilling to have the chance to present it. We put in a lot of work and thought process, and we couldn't have done it without you all informing us, the great work of Pittsburgh, to say the least, and of course, GFOA for just being a thought partner as we've tried to envision what program-centric budgeting could look like. So thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of the day. And I'll sign off.